from uptown, you know my sound is major. I know you like the lyrics, kid, so just do me a favor. Tell the tech to turn my dad up. This is a pack up, hey, yo, don't back up, because I wanna dive in and swim in the mentals, where your thoughts roam. I wanna make your dome my home, therefore you'll never be alone. But when you hear my song, sing along with the rhythm, cause I got big and fat beats that I give them. Yes, it's the ears, and I'm checking out the blonde one. Maybe I can have one, maybe I can con one. Chill, I'm one with God, brothers, it's hard to stay straight until you're scared straight, and then you can't wait.
Here we are, our monkey fans with the 100th Monkey Radio. We're with Sevan tonight, James Evan Bomar III, and you guys, all of our loyal monkey listeners are quite familiar with who you are. And so I'm going to leave the bio at that. And if you guys want to know any more out, there are absolutely links on the webpage here that you can get to Sevan's site and check things out. His website, and probably a great place to start at with his work is theresistance2010.com. And there's definitely a link below. There's also astralquest.com and secretenergy.com that are also his sites. That some amazing work going on there, and some openings of the conscious mind happen on a daily basis within that community. And I've been witness to watching some of the dialogue going on in some of the forums, and just energetically feeling into some of the conversations that are going on there, Sevan. I am amazed at some of the things that are happening there on your site. So,
oh yeah, for sure. And I definitely want to congratulate everyone on the site too, because I jumped in there today, just to talk to someone that I know that's constantly moderating things. And then I was, checking on stuff, because of course we've been building the site, so I haven't had as much time as I would like to pay attention to what's going on the site and to comment, to answer questions as I normally do. And but it was just amazing to see how you really can just leave it, and people really assist each other. Nobody's taking it for a game, so each person is respecting where another individual is coming from. And then you got a lot of people that are diving in, and it's really their first time hearing this, or they've been in this for about a year tops. And they're getting a lot of assistance from others who've not only picked up on the message that we've been bringing, but also have been connecting it with their own things intuitively. And so we do have a real platform full of real-time adepts, based on what's going on right now today and at this moment, which we find to be most relevant. So, I just have a major love, and that love just develops and it grows more every day, and compassion grows more every day as I, come out of my own shell and come out of my own dullness at times, and just allow the energy of the collective to really to start to bathe me, in every tense.
Something that I've noted about those sites and the forums and the dialogue that's going on there that is different from the majority of the other forums and platforms that are out there is the lack of drama.
Oh, yeah.
There's an energy there with what you're putting together, and what the what's happening there. There's an energy of community. There's an energy of love. There's an energy of cooperation and collaboration that is I haven't found it to this caliber anywhere else, Sevan. So,
well, it's I would definitely say that was in major part to, when we began the site, we really set the bar at that it was going to be no nonsense. We have certain protocols, like, you can't just go post some crazy sigil as your avatar or some other being as your avatar. And then, if you get a little nuts, then you can probably be escorted out of the platform. You still can see everything that's there, but you just can't communicate with anybody. And I guess that kind of said really clear from the beginning that, look, we're here to expand you. All the rest of the stuff that goes on in other places, which is generally due to just slacky protocols and a false idea of democracy, meaning, people can just basically say anything. After all, it's a democracy, right? But, that doesn't fly when you got, real people that, their life is at stake with this.
Exactly.
It's changing their lives, and they're looking for the next level of it, and someone standing in their way just becomes, whatever the most negative force that they could ever come up with in their mind. And so just moving that out of people's way and allowing them to be able to gel with each other and to really start to share that connection, man. It's been awesome.
It's good stuff. One more bit of business before we head off into some conscious conversation. We do not have Ramon with us tonight for our listeners out there. He is experiencing a bit of a toothache this evening, and so if all you guys out there, by the time this airs, I'm sure it'll be all healed and everything. But time is a fickle thing, and I'm sure that the energy that's going to be put out this Sunday is going to reach back in time and help Ramon out with what he's going through right now. And let's definitely send some good energy that way. So Sevan. The stage is yours tonight, but there's one thing that I would kind of like for you to kind of touch on through the evening is some of the obstacles that we find on this path, the conscious path. Once we actually firmly get our feet on the path and we are consciously and actively pursuing that inner growth and that inner wisdom, the growth of that within self, within the being. There are some pretty significant obstacles that we come across, and I've noted myself that there are some commonalities and some very common threads out there that people run into.
For sure, because they're just going to be running into themselves. I guess the most disastrous thing on the path can really be oneself, and that'll be definitely clear by the end of tonight's show. And I will let everyone know. Just take a drink of water real quick here. As we progress through the conversation, I'm looking to make some major headway tonight. I'm looking to do something epic because I feel like every time people get involved with the spirituality stuff, they end up like turning into Saturn aliens or something, meaning that their whole emotional system is like defunct and they don't know how to get in there and really, really get the energy going anymore. It's like it's either doom and gloom or it's some fairy tale. So we'd like to really fit ourselves in the balance of that. And so really tonight we're going to talk about how to really achieve the zone, the zen, the balance, etc. I actually dubbed tonight's show, whether to stick or not, or whether it be a later show, The Return of the Starmaker. And that has nothing to do with me. So some people were saying, oh, he's calling himself the Starmaker now. It actually has to do with what's coming from within yourself. So in every tense of what I was saying, it's all of us rather than it being just me. The Return of the Starmaker is when you understand personally what your opinions are. That means like, what are your points of your organism and what is the points of your existence? And then you start to basically grab something and move those points in order for you to interact with, more than just your specific point of the spectrum that you tend to hang on. And I'll say everyone, until making it into the center of their consciousness, may have a little bit of difficult time grasping what's presented tonight because, seeing is believing in this dimension. But in reality, this is something that you can't even see with two eyes. You have to experience it because experience comes with the feeling. Experience is the real gnosis. So moving right along, first of all, I think that this has got to be an adult conversation tonight. It's got to be an adept conversation, meaning that there's certain things that we're just going to have to really agree to before we even can start making sense of a lot of this stuff. And one of those major things is how the human being personally as a creation on this plane functions with both capacities of what we would call light and dark or good and evil or whatever two opposite poles. Because what happens even if I say the word evil, because it has so many programs attached to it and around it, the person immediately gets an idea of really the worst thing, and then they start going from that. But that's when you're so deep into the division, that's what really evil is, that you can't even really pay attention to what's going on because it's so chaotic. But when you really start pulling out of that, you see a lot of connections with really everything in the dualistic plane, and that's either it's yin or yang, either it's supposedly quote-unquote good or bad. And what happens with these worlds, because there's probably a infinite amount of these, or Googleplex amount of these, or whatever word you can give that means the highest number. There's going to be that many of these worlds. But if you have a craving for something like I do, there's being a connoisseur of spirituality, you're looking for the oneness. You're looking for the actual central point, the balance, the Zen, the full perpetual energy center, the all-knowing, the omniscience. You know, we've created a lot of words for this, but can we achieve this? And so tonight we're going to be talking about how to achieve this. I'm obviously an individual that's achieved it already, and I think that that's very important, because if I say, oh, tonight we're going to talk about love, but I haven't loved anybody before, how am I going to teach you about something that I haven't even experienced? So I will tell everyone that, you know, I'm very cool about this. Some people know I can get to ranting and raving, and I calm that down a lot within the last 2 years, because people need to hear you through all of that. So when I want to explain, it may seem like I wouldn't even be able to sit here and talk to you clearly like I'm doing right now, and that may make you believe that maybe I haven't experienced that. But I'll tell you the truth, that I wouldn't even have gotten on this radio and started talking about this message, or even 5 years ago starting the resistance and writing the Code of the Matrix. I wouldn't even have done any of that if it wasn't about something viable, because I'm just not constructed that way. I'm not built that way. I'm not a person that has had really a major trouble with getting around in the reality. I won't say the reality has been kind to me, but what I'm saying is I know how to function in a reality. I have a lot of skill sets, so I can go and do different things and accomplish what most people want to accomplish, i.e. money. But this is about beyond money. This is not about me needing something from you. So I just want basically people to erase all that from their mind. I'm not trying to get you onto the side. I'm not trying to sign you up to something. What I'm doing here is I'm fulfilling something that I promised out of integrity to the universe, which is basically, if you come in here and you start eating these snacks, eating these fruits, eating all this stuff, and then you're getting taken care of, you're warm at night, the sun's warming you, you know, all this kind of support system, then you end up having to balance that out at some point. And what I'm talking about is that for some people, Earth can be considered a 5-star hotel. Obviously, many people don't see it that way. They want to check out. But in reality, especially the people from the Western Hemisphere, or towards the north, really, which is what caused that. Just like you can see the north area of your body doesn't have to really process much toxins. It gets a chance to enjoy, like the eyes and the ears and the nose. It gets a chance to enjoy the entire surroundings, why the lower areas have to process all of what you ate during that night when you ate the French food, or, you know, all of the different desires that we fulfill with the upper area of the body. The lower area of the body tends to have to carry that weight. So in the northern regions, generally you find people that are well-to-do. And in that stage, then you accrue a very high bill in many tenses. And some people don't see it that way. But the reality is if you start getting pampered and you start getting entrained into an illusion, then you got to go back down that entire path, and sometimes even wean yourself off of certain things before you can actually begin to see the balance point. So in a certain sense, all of this is very similar to the structures of things like banking and things like governments. That doesn't end in anything that you can see in the physical eye, including those other planets out there. And so the reality is the system may be working better and more perfected in what they call the first heaven, but that also means the first haven, meaning the first place that the beings went when they went into duality. Right? So that's why they always say, well, God's up there, or Deus or Zeus or the divided being is up there in the first heaven. But the first heaven is still denoted as basically one of the lowest places you can really get to, because you're coming out of totality. You're coming out of all connectedness, oneness. And so let me show you how this human being thing works about the good and evil. Now, I can be in the shower. I can think I'm doing good hygiene, obviously, to do a good job for the people that I'm going to meet, so I don't smell and not accumulate a bunch of bacteria, etc. So I'm doing good, right? Until I flush about 30 to 40 gallons down the sink that nobody is going to be able to really recoup on, mainly those people that are out there in those countries that they're running out of water in 2 weeks, or the water is completely contaminated. They just want to drop, right? So I'm doing good. Or what if I go and join up with the Red Cross and I go fly out and I start healing all these people and working with my time and all that kind of thing. But meanwhile, JD, Mr. Rockefeller and Dickleby are sitting back there reaping all the major benefits from the loans and the donations that are coming in, right? But I'm doing good, right? So see, what happens is that we have this ability to really look at only what we think is correct and good. And that's, of course, still opinionated, but that's our thing. We only look at what is really good about us, but we don't see the shadow. So thus, if we never take a moment to look at that, then we also don't see the other side of this coin in this dualistic world. And that's what keeps us trapped. We remain in a polarity where we begin to basically only see how things are right, not left. Notice the terminology here. You're literally saying everything that's good is one specific direction, while everything that's bad is in another direction. So if you polarize yourself way too much into one area, then you come out of balance. And out of balance is out of balance. I don't really care what you're doing. And I like the way a friend expressed it to me. He said, look, the universe, it doesn't really care what the story is. It's only reading your frequency. So whatever caused you to get into a certain frequency, that's not the language the universe speaks. The universe speaks frequency. So if you get into that frequency, you're going to be in there. So I want to talk about something about, just to clear the plate for most people before we even begin, about judging yourself. Now, in the deep levels of the cult, what you'll find is that they say the final being that you tend to run into when you're on your way out of here, and everyone will leave, and they maybe come back at some point, but you will leave, is the being known as the dweller, also known as the dweller of the threshold. And the exact identity of this being has been very similar to some kind of reaper or the devil or something like that. But when you have the works in front of you that actually explain it in more detail, it says that it's basically an accuser or a judge. And what this supposedly at this point external being does is continuously show you all the situations that you already know that you've done in life that have judged you to not be fit to make it beyond this dimension, right? And so this is what they say, that the dweller of the threshold stands at the gate, and that if it turns you back, then that's when you go through this next incarnation. You go through another incarnation. So we now have discovered, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that what this being is particularly is something that we're creating based on this same idealism of this good and bad, which actually creates a lock, even a guard, that doesn't allow us to get out of this circle. Later, we're going to talk about how time is not a straight line. It's a circle. A lot of people see it as a straight line, that it goes back infinitely and it goes forward infinitely. No, that's not the truth. Time is a circle. It only got invented inside of a cycle. It is a course, meaning a lesson that you need to learn and know nothing more. So going deeper into this judgment, okay, what we find is that this is not just about you telling someone else that, you know, oh, you need to do this and you need to do that, or you're telling someone else that, oh, I don't like this person. This is the surface level of what judgment does. There's much deeper levels of judgment. And this is why the old time script says, judge and ye shall be judged. And what this is literally a riddle for perpetual motion. The moment that you actually make that judgment, then something that has a tendency to be the opposite energy will come back at you at a certain point. So as long as you're making judgments, then you're always going to be judged. And these judgments and judgings is something like a motor. Once you do it one time, then something else comes back. That makes you do it again, then you come back. So even if you notice in certain families, if someone kills someone, the judgment of hatred against that other family will lock these two families into almost infinite incarnations of each of them trying to get back at one another and continuously judging one another. So when I tell you it's in everything, it's in the language. The moment that we start to talk, we generally are already judging something. Even if I say glass, it's denoting a glass from a pot or something that's one way to something that's another. And people may think that that's extreme. But that's exactly how tight the grip is here of what we're doing. Because this judgment stems into the yin and yang. Like, you got to think about what you're doing. When you say one thing that you want and one thing that you don't, you're now cutting it. So you've now, in a sense, made the division. So this places you, and this is what I recently discovered, that the term God, and why they were trying to throw even that title off on the human being, saying ye are gods. Because it was tied to that, because gods are dualistic, that humans are dualistic, and that now they know the knowledge of good and evil. So they're like, gods.
Right.
You say on the text, you say, oh, you know the knowledge of good and evil. Now you're like gods, meaning that, you guys now have the problem of the same beings that are actually in this plane with us that think, and then they show you the mentality, I'm the only one and there's no other before me. You are all this and this and this. And so you watch, this is a world stage then, baby. A world stage where they're playing a game of duality, smile now, cry later, big time drama. And then we've gotten so into this act that we don't realize the real lies, like it's an oxymoron. We don't realize that we've bought into a huge illusion. And even expecting something out of this automatically puts the person on one pole or the other pole, because if you really understand what's going on, there's nothing wrong. It's only when you start looking at this reality, oh, if it was just better, and if this was just like this, and this was like, whoa, what are we talking about here? You talking about the dual plane? The moment you create better, someone has to create the opposite. That's the only way anyone knows how that you've even created something. Something has to highlight that. So if I say wheat germ is good, someone will pop up and say wheat germ is horrible. And our interlocking battle will serve to make wheat germ more known. That's from its good aspect and its bad aspect. So that's the whole thing then, my friends. And again, it becomes an addiction. So what happens is that it's gotten very graduated, this judgment thing. Now I'll show you how wired in it is. Of course, in the Old Testament, most popular book in the world, not the New Testament, the Old Testament, because it's still in more circulation. So the Old Testament, it talks about the judges. And it gives people how many judges are there. How many judges in the Bible? 12. Okay, so why are they using that number? It's 12 signs to the zodiac. See, they're not talking about per se physical men. What they're talking about is archetypes, meaning energies that influence the way that a person comes out, meaning that's the real judgment. Something that influence the way that you come out. And this is why the zodiac signs, if you see a person under the sign of Scorpio, there tends to be a certain kind of character tied into that person 95% of the time. You see what I mean? So you can basically base a person's temperament, their attitude, how they're going to react, basically their judgment, on what sign or house they've come from. Okay, so where they've been judged to go next because they were judging. So here's another thing. If you notice in mysticism, they always talk about that there is another plane, but there's a gate there. And then there's something guarding that gate. And then they try to give it always the most crazy and the most ferocious kind of appearance, and that everyone is afraid of it. And it's because it's themselves. Never will a person see how much they're afraid of until they close their eyes with the third eye on. Meaning that what we're actually dealing with inside of ourselves that is making so many people external and just completely run away from what's inside is all of the monsters that have been consumed in this reality that has been fed to us day after day, whether the monsters in the food, some kind of chemical, some kind of worm, the monsters in the media, real monsters on TV, they're showing it and flashing it, the monsters at every single corner. So what that makes is it makes a society that is ready to go outside and judge someone else, because the last thing they want to do is judge themselves. But these days, I'll tell you, the best thing that we can do is begin to judge ourselves very briefly and to realize very, very fast that the grace is sufficient. And I'll explain that very deeply, because a lot of these texts, and finding out more and more every day, like I've read the Bible 3 times and just, kind of cast it away from me for a while and just looked at it into deeper things. But in going back to it and realizing some of the things that are written, it's proving to be very paramount in realizing exactly how people get stranded, and even how I've been stranded onto this dimension. So it's a very important thing. But you know what? I'll come back to that in just a minute. What I really want people to see is that what you're wrestling against here, if you have any kind of opponent, is your flesh. And the reason is the flesh, who's connected to reptilian, connected to Aquarian, connected to everything you see as animalistic on that zodiac, is a lot more convinced about what it is than the mind. And only the soul knows better. And let me explain that again. The mind is like a puff of cloud based on how much it really believes in the illusion, whatever you've accepted as some kind of spiritual theism. People have not experienced anything like spirituality, especially if they've only been looking external for some kind of phenomena or some kind of feeling externally that will cause that, no matter what it is. So this lets us all see very clearly that the dense body, who's gone through complete metamorphosis from amoeba to apex predator, that kinds of status, meaning in the DNA string, that kind of resilience of its existence, that's what you're actually attempting to explain, that there is something greater. Okay, so I want people to see that very clearly, that all of what they keep talking about, again, reptilian, mammalian, in the thousands of years that have gone through this evolution is not a lie. And this body has developed a certain stage of consciousness, but surely it doesn't even compare to where the soul is. The soul tells you where it is by its word. It's in one. Okay, so what we're seeing is we're seeing now that the dense body is trying to stay and believes that this is the only thing that actually exists. And what our mind is attempting to do is become strong enough to connect the dense body, or introduce the dense body to the soul and to the possibility of living on rather than perishing like everything of flesh does. So getting into this, I want to talk about very briefly how time is not as we think. And I'm not talking about that it just being a circle, but that it's also, in every tense of what I'm saying, a frequency. Because what I witness with my own single eye, not my own two eyes, was that other objects that are in this reality, like trees, begin to come alive when you begin to move on the frequency that they're on. So you can actually be looking at what would appear to be a dead tree. And then when you turn on your faculties and start to go into the frequencies of where that tree is still alive, that tree starts to come alive. And this is very paramount to what has been going on in this reality, and for us to understand time fully and complete, because it actually gives you the ability to begin to rewind time and actually do away with time altogether, and to also really look deeper into exactly how our reality around us is actually functioning based on the frequency. And then that frequency is changing what we call time and making things faster or slower, or changing our experience. So I want to take a moment here, just to allow you to speak into, because all of these things I'm just skating over a little bit, so that within this second half, as we always do, we can drill into these a little bit more and to start really pulling out how all this stuff is put together, because this is now time for it to happen. It can happen. And that's just, of course, if I can, clear my mind and keep clear enough during the conversation to be bringing this back into duality. And so people need to understand this. Like, don't look at what I'm saying and wonder if it's actually making sense. Hope that I actually get a chance to put the right words together to allow it to make sense to you, because I know what I'm talking about. But the reality is I'm talking. So what I'm doing right away is I'm putting it into duality. And I'll give you another way of looking at that. A 0 and a 1. Okay, they call this the digital world. Now, the digital begins with DI, and we've seen that word before. It's called die, meaning to split into two, or dice, two dice. Die or deuce is all the same word. It means two. So if you look into computers, the reason why they're digital is because they consist of a 0 and a 1. Okay? So that means that the moment that I even function on duality, if I function on the good and the bad, the light and the dark, I'm now in the digital world, which is an illusion. So this digital world you're seeing in the computer, it's just a mirror for the digital world of the robots rebellion, or the people here that have been connected to a good, evil, dualistic mentality that have become automatonly robotic and now are functioning on perpetual energy until they break down. And then they're built again and reanimated, and then they give it another shot. You see what I mean? So what I'm telling people is that while we're looking at the computers and wondering if they're going to try to incept the reality, as far as it being digital, this reality is already digital because it functions on duality. And the computers were just a shadow of what was already being done in the spiritual realm on these lower planes. Okay? And to go on, how you would see these realities then is they look like webs. See, when a grander projection that contains tons of components, chairs, computers, tables, good, evil, grass, all these kind of things, it comes out like a web. They just call this the web of Gaia. And when it's cast over you, just like in a dream, you then perceive the energies that you're seeing, which are really coming in as light, as more denser objects, and thus begin based on your experience. So if you've only seen a chair before, you interpret almost all energies as chairs. Okay, and this is very important to know. Like what other animals are tend to be seeing, and other lower organisms are seeing everything as one thing almost. Why? Because they haven't gained the faculties yet to distinguish cut, shape, carve, which again, the language is the key power to doing that. Cut, shape, and carve it out as something else and begin to build it. So I'm going to rewind here, and I'm going to talk about Cain and Abel, because this is a very important metaphor to understand.
Hey, Seven, real quick before you go into Cain and Abel, I have one question about something you talked about a bit ago, and the gatekeeper beyond the veil of life, right? That judge. Now, in my experience and what I have found in my own personal research and through discussion and conversations with others, is that this gatekeeper, and I agree 100% that this is a creation of ourselves. This is something that we are creating for ourselves. But the question that I do have with even for myself is, do we have the ability to embody a separate, or a perception of a separate individuality or sentience?
Oh, for sure. We do it all the time in the dream. Like everything that you're seeing in the dream as a universe is what you're creating. And in almost 95% of the cases, unless you're dealing with a trained adept that knows how to get into your own projection and speak to you inside of there, and that's also generally very vivid when something like that occurs, all of those characters are being built up to take you into generally the greatest fear. That's what most people tend to experience, is whatever they fear the most. There's a whole dream cooked up where that starts going on, with even individuals playing roles that they've never seen before. Right. So it's important to understand that this dweller, the threshold, the judge, etc., is a specific frequency. And so when someone phase locks in that frequency, mainly leaving the body and being afraid of what's going to happen next, that's really the case that most people experience when they're about to leave here. They don't leave easily, like, oh, okay, great, it's finally time. I'm about to ease up out of this thing and ease on down the road. It's not like that. It's more like, oh my goodness, what's going to happen to me? I'm sorry, Kate. So in that tense, the dweller is there because the dweller is a frequency. It will always remain there, just like, there's always a foundation to a pyramid, right? Right. And then so what happens is in order to collapse this being, in certain tenses, the term my grace is sufficient is important, because people need to understand that when you're even doing things like prayer, you're really talking to your higher self, or the more perfected version of yourself. And when you realize that, you get a lot more out of those kind of cycling of your higher energy to your lower energy. But that whole term, the grace is sufficient, is meaning that don't believe that there's anything that you could have ever done that would allow the totality of all things to all of a sudden not welcome you back into the totality. It's not even a question. Right. And on top of that, it's not even two different places. We're just in an illusion. We're separating ourselves based on this guilt, based on this fear. And then we've adapted into frequencies that harvest those kind of things, which are separate from, hey, what's to be guilty about? Like, what's the big deal, man? Like, what is your problem? The whole level of the comprehension of the ego. And so, this is also something, the next thing, like I was, I tell people, like, it's way different. Like, it's all energetics, and we need to be together when we're experiencing that. So it's not even something to start talking about, it was beautiful and the sun was, come on, what are you talking about? Another plane? Are you talking about another planet again? Because what we understand to be beyond this is pure energy. It's undivided. And to even be able to get the faculties to comprehend that would even be us understanding where nothing comes from, which seems to be beyond anyone that I bumped into around here. I can even explain it, but that doesn't mean that I've gotten any further, because of course I can explain you came from, why you can't comprehend what was going on when you came from nothing is because you didn't have any senses. Senses is what makes you comprehend. Sight, hearing, taste, smell, touch are the swords even of the pentagram that you're using in order to cut out a phi-based reality. Right. And then there's many facts to numbers also. Like, the reason why the number 7 becomes significant is because there's 7 different entry and exit points from your sphere. Look at your head. This is the main sphere, the prime globe or prime mobile, right? So you got 2 eyes, two ears, you got 2 holes in your nose, and then what? 1 mouth. Letting us see what is really responsible for bringing all these forces together, our mouths. So what frequency comes out of the mouth tends to exhibit where exactly the person's stage of consciousness is, and if whether or not they have achieved balance. And wise people, they just let you sit down and talk, because they can see right from there, what your issue may be and how they can help you. And that's really the only thing that they're really concerned about, not so much as small talk. But this is of course, it's an amazing thing to get to this point, to begin to comprehend this, but to begin to do the real work, like getting rid of the dweller of the threshold, means that you literally are looking at every single situation from one point and understanding how you're just judging everything, and how when judging goes on, it stops you from wherever you started judging at. So you can go through you may not even get to the beginning of the book before you already judge, this guy's a Rosicrucian, he must be a part of secret societies, and I'm reading it. So you throw it away, never realizing that this may be the guy that actually gave them all the knowledge that they have before they got usurped by Weishaupt and the rest of those guys. Because you just don't know the whole story. And that just tends to happen with judges. Judges tend to not listen to the whole story before they are already judging. Think about the courthouse judge. He doesn't listen to about the kid that was raised in the crazy household with a dad that was a drug addict, and then they beat on him, and then that's why he left the house early, learned to steal. Then he stole somebody's car and he's there. They judge, did he actually steal the car or not? You see, so they're judging falsely. So how to get out of that jurisdiction, because you'll be hearing, that's what they call it, a hearing. You'll be hearing all of this judgment for a prolonged period of time with these basically pretend hermaphrodites. That's why they're wearing dresses and why they're wearing wigs at times, because they're trying to be in the image of the king, who's Cain. So this is why I was explaining a little bit earlier, because it gets into a little bit more about how to pull apart the dweller of the threshold, is to understand that inside of your temple, in your consciousness on the dual sides, there's a Cain and there's an Abel. This was easier seen, especially in Gnostic tradition, as a sheep and a goat, because they got different personalities. And then on top of that, that's why the goats later on became known as the Masons. That's why there's all this relationship to the goat, and even the pentagram being turned upside down being called the goat, because the pentagram right side up is called the sheep. You see? And these different perspectives of the person's character is like this. Cain wanted to build the temple. Cain was not interested in believing that there was going to be some higher power that was going to come and sustain everyone, et cetera, et cetera. Cain was going to build all of that if it was ever to come past. Why Abel, which is why his offering was accepted, was like, it's whatever you want. I'm ready and willing. I'm able. So if it's going to come, it's going to come. What you've given me is all I need. And when it's time for me to go, I'll go. So you see, you have two adverse polarities. You have basically left brain, right brain, but on a deeply occult level. So in every tense, we do need to find the balance between the Cain and Abel of our consciousness, because many taking in this new age wave have gone really far to the right. But that was part of the plan, because if you've been in duality, what we call peace, if we've been in duality for a prolonged period of time, then the thing you really need is a little bit of wholeness, because that swings you into the opposite sphere for a while, so you can see exactly what the contrast is to where you've been. So these manifest as numbers. I call it 0, 1, 2. To me, there's no other numbers higher than 0, 1, 2. And I'll explain, because the wholeness, which is, well, first of all, let me explain peace so people get that. Now, when you ask for peace, which this world has termed as being cool and docile and nothing's going wrong and everything is beautiful, which is never could be true. Peace is a part of something, not the whole thing. So with just peace, you basically have the first act of duality. That's why the whole peace thing came from the papacy. It came from the Pope. It came from those with the P, because they use that symbol as the Chiro. They use the actual symbol P as a call sign. Okay? So the peace, which they hold up with 2 fingers when you're holding it up, is actually the symbol of dualism. It means basically the concept of the United Nations. It will all be able to live well together after this next war. And it has done that for millions, billions, who knows how long, this acts of peace. So the only other pole is 0. We call that the rabbit hole. That's basically when you just assume that if you do opposite to what everyone else is doing, maybe you'll come up to it something. Because everyone, by your conclusion, is surely going in the wrong direction. But this then turns you inside, right? And this is like synonymous with the monk going into the cave. But inside to what? Because now you got to figure out a lot of stuff. That's why they call it the rabbit hole. Now, just because you've gone within doesn't mean you know what's going on. And they say that this is synonymous with, some people believe that when they get to this next plane, right, this astral plane, that when they can get there and they can learn how to operate there and they start learning everything about that place, that they'll be in much better condition. This is foolish. Because look at what we did here. We thought the same thing. When we got to this planet, we were going to learn everything just like the scientists claim that they know now, and then we're going to map it all out, and then it was going to be happiness. But that's not what's going on. So what makes us think that that's going to happen on this next level if we keep taking the same things that we've done on this level, anything, to that level? All this has got to stay here. It's not just, well, wait, I got to get the ring that my grandmama gave me. Wait, my husband, he was still there. Wait, no. Nothing will be going. All this is contaminated with duality. Like, this is what you're trying to get away from, whether you understand it or not. Now, there's no rush, because there's no such thing as time, but do get on your way. Because think about what I'm saying. When I say there's no such thing as time, I'm meaning that directly. There is no such thing as time, but if somehow you've been in it, you better get some stuff together very fast. You better make a jailbreak fast, because anytime time is in the equation, time will run out. So right. You need to get to a space where there's no time. And I'm happy to say that that space does exist. So realize what Wholeness bought 6 years ago, 5 years ago, whenever we began that, even that term, is it was swinging people out of the peace hemisphere into the complete thing, which was like a rabbit hole. We tried to dissect it with numbers, letters, animals, lions, tigers, bears, oh my. Like, it was just so vast. Wholeness. Think about what you're talking about. It's a portal to infinitum. But it's not oneness. And that's what's coming next. Oneness is the integer. It is what it is. Look at it. It's a straight line. So I told you that time runs in a circle. So a straight line must be the way out. Why? Because it's like a needle. It pops the bubble. It's the balance. It's the zen. It's really at the moment. When somebody say, hey man, you straight? Yeah, I'm straight. That's balance. You see what I mean? So, and it makes perfect sense, because this gives us the symbol of what the pyramid really means. On one bottom, let's say the bottom left corner is the 0. On the bottom right corner, there's the 2. Now, automatically the brain rejects that. So no, 1 comes next. No, it doesn't. See, it's all mixed up. Let me just tell you what's going on. 0 on one side, because 0 will always battle 2. Wholeness will always battle peace, because it just seems not right. But what you need to do is you need to get to 1. That is the top of the pyramid. That is the tip. That's when, and remember, the pyramid has been the whole body. You got 0, 2, and 1, and there's only really one way out. You see, I mean, there's one way out of duality is right to them. And that's why I say anyone that's on this level, the metaphor is there's no one left. That's why I was saying in one of my last shows that in all these holograms, the only thing always missing is one thing, mainly God. I said, where's God? Oh, God's not here. Well, why not? Well, it's because that supreme being is one. And because we're in duality, we can't be where it is. We've figured out a way to sever ourselves from that to learn this lesson in this university about what? Some people are always looking for the meaning of life. There can only be one meaning to life. To learn how to get out of duality. The main component of physical worlds is the yin and the yang, is the phi, is the 72 degrees times 5, the pentagram, the perfect circle. It is the equations, even all the mathematical expressions, the numbers, which make a person numb. You can count ad infinitum until you get tired and fall out on the floor and throw up. You can keep counting. So that lets us see it's in the wrong direction. And guess what? If time wasn't going to run out and wasn't limited, then nobody would die. Because our perception of time would be, oh, it's ad infinitum. That's not what time teaches. Time is a frequency. And it teaches us that if you don't maintain mainly above the speed of light, because when you get below the speed of light, all the creations and manifestations start. So if you can stay above the speed of light in your consciousness, then you won't what's called age, because you won't be in time. You won't make errors, because there will be no era or units of time. So thus, if you can't make an error, then there's no judgment, because there's no lower frequency to sit here and tell you that you've done something wrong in your own mind, in your temple. How dare you let something come in your temple and tell you and accuse you? You need to be doing that on your own if you really understand and understand what exactly is going on here. And the reason why someone may judge you non-efficient. And that's where this whole thing comes in with the sovereign. And the whole thing comes in with this constant graduated system of teaching a person how to be a slave. Right? Because that's when they've judged you not a free man. You see? So this is integral stuff. And we're going to keep moving through this because it's so integral. It's just so integral. I'm take a moment though, because, I kind of skipped forward a little bit here through my thing because we need to talk about these webs of projection. Because now if you look on the front door of the Bohemian Grove, it says, spiders weave not thy web here. And in fact, if you take every single other first letter and you read it, it says something else too. But it's a riddle for saying. Jabulon, who is the spider, is the metaphor, is weaving webs or matrices that other souls are getting trapped in that are not a part of this club or custom of worshiping this owl. Okay? So this is just, it could be some Boy Scouts that put something together. Who cares what it is or how it began? We need to understand what it's become. But then if you go in non-biased though, and this is what the key is to all the knowledge. These are the two keys of Peter, the gold key and the silver key. If you go in non-biased, you get a chance to understand the entire thing. You get a chance to even see the web work, meaning that if someone casts a net of a projection over you, it comes out like a cymatic and it wraps around you and then starts to make you perceive the reality as it's not really, it isn't how it isn't really. Okay. And then, after a while, it starts to look like a yarn ball. You got so many webs cast over you. Think about it. Like, it's down to an nth of a micron, like whatever they call the size of an atom. Imagine a web that's weaved that's that small, and then those kind of webs cast over an individual ad infinitum, till those webs end up becoming shells, trapping the individual so far away from who they really are, they can't break out. But then the prison break starts. See, I already realized this, like this is, 5-6 years into making the prison break. And it happened because I happened to get myself into a little bit of trouble when I went to prison. And then when I got out, it was only like because I waxed strong in spirituality while I was away. And when I came home, though, that frequency of being in a prison didn't go away necessarily. And then I had to scan it. Like, why isn't the frequency of prison gone away yet? And it took me 2 years to finally get a feedback on what that scan was about. But basically that scan entailed it's an illusion. Everything that you think you are, this name they gave you, your parents gave you the name based on someone else that gave them the name, that gave them the name, that they may have liked, that got the name from somebody else that they liked, that gave them the name. You see what I'm talking about? So you basically even can have the same name as somebody else and you're calling yourself unique. All those things must be cast away, meaning any kinds of identification with redundancy need to be cast away. But remember, in a reptilian Republican reality, what's really going to happen is they teach through repetition. Reptilians, repetition, that's why they do rituals. This is all rated R stuff, by the way. That's why all this stuff begins with R.
Reptilian Republican.
Oh, yeah, I mean, it's just the whole repetitive cycle, but there's a mastery in this cycle, make no mistake, meaning that you have beings that are like Smeagol with the earth. They just as soon as hold on to this in fear of what goes on next. And let me explain why, because this is not, because a lot of people always say, they say, oh yeah, the higher beings can't get to the next level and they're scared of it, blah, blah, blah. You damn right. Let me explain to you what really happens. It's a frequency. So if you actually make yourself what looks like a knight on another realm, it's a gray aura. And it actually builds up around the person like a shell. So this is the kind of guy that'd be like, yo man, dance, laugh or something. He'd just be sitting there. And if you look at his aura, it's all gray. So that gray-like, ghost-like aura has a problem when trying to move through energetic fields because it starts to crack. And then because what's under that layer is so nubile, so fresh, and so not even been around outside of the box in so long, it's hazardous for it to be out into a real reality that is the real truth about things.
Right.
And so this is at times what many of us do with ourselves. We build up all these layers and shells and shields and swords and serpents and all sorts of stuff just all over the place for what? They say, oh, it's for protection. That's why they put the serpent on the saying. What is it for? Well, it's protection. I sense fear. What are you protecting yourself from? The dweller. Oh, no wonder why. Somebody didn't get the memo to you guys. You guys created the dweller too. There's no part of this that we didn't. And this is the other thing. I'm glad we started talking about this because I have to tell everyone who they really is. Because the they thing was gone way too far. Because they is getting way too much power. They is you. And let me explain how. This is from what we agreed upon on the Mount of Hermon when the 33rd fell and gave you the degrees in your back. We agreed that there would be a collective projection here and that we would all use our powers and ability to do this damn thing. And that's exactly some of the terminology
what
that
the
was used.
hell were we thinking?
Well, Semyaza was doing all the thinking. Meaning that one of the more perfect angels was doing all of the thinking when it conceived that it would create a perfect physical reality and outdo Father. This is the standard competition. Like in the beginning, it was only a competition between Son and Father. That competition still exists within the Bible, whether people know it or not.
Right.
So, but that whole competitive thing, that begets the judgments. Because what is always at the end of any competition? The winner. Right. As they say, second place is the first loser. The reality is that any kind of red and blue competition gets judgment going on because someone's got to win. And so this is just, again, a part of that whole thing. But they is all of us, because in a collective projection, see, this is what happens. If I only can create daisies, then I get a little bored of seeing these daisies. And if you can create oak trees, then maybe we need to talk. So then we can have a reality of daisies and oak trees. And then so what we'll do is we'll come together in union. That's what harmony is. It's sexual or sexual. Two triangles will come together, and then they will birth from the center something, a blend of both of them. And so what they is billions, they can't even be counted, of decisions that are made at every single moment that are all mating and spawning with each other to make an outcome. So oftentimes this will create an outcome that you do not want, because there's always an outcome that you do want and always an outcome that you don't want, because you're still in duality. So you see, this is how the wheel gets kicking. And what I've done is, and me and a good friend of mine, Jason, we've begun to record at least the 7 or 8 phases, or 7, 8, 9 phases of judgment, meaning stuff that you haven't even seen. When you look at judgment backwards, like I said, instead of thinking about you judging other people, the main thing you need to be looking at is, have you been judging yourself non-worthy? Because once you do that, then you get caught in this frequency. Now, let me explain a little bit about these frequencies. In the frequencies, the deeper frequencies of duality correspond to the animals. No matter how cute and cuddly and snuggly you think this thing may be, before we domesticate it, it will rip your head off. And that's just how it works. That's all a part of the ecosystem. So what the netters were doing, which the netters are the forces of nature now, because netter and nature are the same word, even when crossed over from each tradition. But what you'll see is that the netters were utilizing different vessels to experience consciousness in the dualistic reality. The netters were the first gods. Nature is the first god. That is the elementals. So those are the forces in which things began from, and then all the trickles down come later. So the dog is a very key component to this current stage of evolution, as they call it, basically more gradual progress into duality. Hey, we've gotten far now. How far we got to go? I don't know. I can't see. It's too dark. But we definitely can keep a light bearer around that'll actually keep lighting all this stuff up until we figure out how we're going to light up all the space again. How long is that going to take? Look how much progress we've made. You look in the sky at night and see how much progress has been made about lighting up the darkness. So the reality is that, you know, I get a little excited about this, by the way, but the reality is that the dog body, who is Cain, who is a canine, who is from Canaan, was used as a portal. This portal is known as the black dog, but she's a bitch, meaning that it's actually not a male. If anything, it's a male-female. That's why the Baphomet is hermaphroditic. But all the rest of the symbolism is way too encrypted for people to see that that's Venus in the other stage of its consciousness as an initiator into the dark mysteries, which basically look like a vagina. You see, the initiation to the dark mysteries is not all of what they keep writing about with their fanciful tales in these books. It's about plunging into wombs and then replicating yourself into realities and then experiencing it like an adventure because you're lost and don't know where you're going. Meaning that the craziest act could be to drive in to an actual womb reality and then reincarnate yourself there and then start to try to figure out what's going on. And we've done that. We've plunged headlong into this reality in order to experience what? And we talked about this earlier, duality. Because there's only one other place when you leave totality. And so, you know, that I believe can give us the first half. We can take us a moment. And then when we come forward, as I always say, you know, just to keep it somewhat correct, then we'll get into, you know, we'll get a little bit more about the dog tags, even why the U.S. military has them wearing dog tags. You got to think about that.
Oh, that'd be good, yeah.
We'll get into a little bit more of the depth of the cymatics and those kind of things that actually create the reality, or what we're calling reality. I always say there's reality and actuality. And of course, unless you have something you want to address now.
Well, yeah, a couple of things. I just want to make a comment about being your own father. I had a full-blown vision of being just that. I embodied my father. It was bizarre. It was one of those full-blown waking conscious visions too. So I just found that coincidental. One other thing I want to touch on out of this first hour before we go into a break here is going back to that pyramid metaphor that you brought up of the 0, the 2, and the 1 being at the top. Now, my question there, and you said that the meaning of life, the goal is to get out of this reality. Now, my question there is it getting out of the reality of the duality, or is it mastering the duality?
Well, obviously, it's like the chicken or the egg in the tense to that question, because, you know, as one experiences the duality, they move their cells back up into union. So if you can see, because this pyramid is in, the complete thing is inside the body, and then the top point or the exit point is really the top of the consciousness. It's like right when you're about to, come out of that thing entirely. But as you seed into the body, you spread things into two. But if you notice, even there's a central part of the brain. There's the corpus callosum, which is basically responsible for communicating with the left brain and the right brain. So, and having the left brain and the right brain communicate with one another. So the symbolism, it is very replete in itself. And when we just look at it just for what it is, at the top, and this is why, if you take a symbol like this and you say it's the Illuminati, and then it gets you all crazy, because that's why there's a sun on the top. Because that's what the metaphor means. The sun is the soul. So that means one. So we're able to denote just even by that one point. People need to see the symbol just for the common sense in it. Just at that one point, we're now at the soul. We're at basically the being of ourselves that is collected and where we've come out of. And this is why the other 2 points are always where? They're at the bottom, right? One on the left and one on the right. They've been able to accomplish, as they keep going out of duality more and more, they get further and further apart. You see, the symbolism is telling tons of things, because if you come from that central point and then spread into duality in physical worlds from there, and then you basically, you know mathematically that you were your father as you come into the dimension, because one begets another, and that's not even a part of any kind of mystery or whatever mythology. Right. It's a fact. It would have to be a fact. But remember, when you can get deeper into the symbolism, you see that the king was Kahin. It means it's Qaheen, which was the cognate for a queen, like a king queen, to prove, just as you see on most alchemical charts, that they say the first being that came on the planet was basically an androgen, and it had that ability to reproduce from itself. And that was basically so if you're seeing what's really being said, and this is how you know it's a fact. So king, the word king is the word Cain. Okay? So from that point, you're seeing that Cain was the first child that was born from God. Okay? So let's just look at it as a metaphor. What they're saying is the totality, the sun, the soul, the supreme being, split itself, and the first thing that split itself from just being that central consciousness. You can't even say it was a male female inside of the same body. And this is why I was saying you get 0, 1, 2, and then you even X out the 3. There's no such thing, because in the totality, and this becomes, just a further elaboration, there is no gender at all. So you can't even say that it's a male female and that's totality. No. The next being, the one that's called let me see, I guess that would be called 0, okay, is an androgen. You see? And so this is how, it's like numbers will reveal it if we're willing to rework the numbers. And, I had someone, and I don't even tell the story, but basically someone who went really far in the mathematics, to a point where, because of how much they were known, they had to approach the Society of Physics of the U.S., and to go in and to show them these numbers that they had been getting wrong. And the person couldn't understand, if everyone had progressed so far along in math, why couldn't they see this simple equation? They sent this man out of the room, sent spies after this man, and this man they watch from till today to make sure the man doesn't tell people in the arena of physics what he really discovered about how our numbers are wrong.
Wow.
And we don't have to get into the big fat Einstein equations, more so than just seeing that the 0 in the identity of it, the 1 in the identity of it, and the 2 has been interchanged and messed all up. And so just that kind of change in our framework, since we're already in this dualistic thing, then it changes everything. It turns everything backwards. Like I was saying with even the word backwards, that it would make our words backwards. It would make our brains turn in the opposite direction. It would basically wreak havoc on our consciousness, even if we were making some type of progress. And this is why the English language has been directly connected, especially from the people who brought it forth. They were connecting it to phi. So that was the whole purpose of the language. So it shows that the language was constructed off of a theory of infinite division, because that's, of course, the anomaly with phi, that it just keeps spitting out more and more numbers, and nothing does that. So if you see this, and this is another thing, especially for code heads, if you see phi then as a self-replicating seed germ, this means I drop this from the sky, mainly like a diamond, a pyramid, with phi encrypted inside of it. It slams down from the velocity of what it's catching from the atmosphere. It slams itself down deep into the core of the earth, thus throwing it off 23.5 degrees. Then division begins. There's 5 sides on a 4-sided pyramid. There's the point and the 5 sides, the four points on the side. And there goes the beginning of division. You see, because all the mathematics that were learned from that point even were encoded within that pyramid, and also mainly the ones that were in Upper Egypt, Nubia. So you see how even just one of those, again, dropping around to people that may not even know what's going on, it's projecting in itself duality in a sense, or saying, hey, you need to divide more and you need to discover more. And I'm not, again, so when you get out of duality, you don't keep saying, oh, this is bad, and oh my goodness, I can't believe, oh, this is wrong. And you get out of all of that, or you would have never got this far. The reality is, like, even when they drop an obelisk, like they drop some of the obelisks from Egypt all the way in Washington, D.C. Why? Because those obelisks were there being worshipped, consecrated, and prayed to during a certain time where the frequency that was all pervading is that everyone was actually under the rulership of one being that was really more competent than somebody like Obama or Bush of running an entire nation into a level of being able to expand themselves. You see what I mean?
Right.
So, but still that whole frequency of dominion, which no one has right. You see, because even a person may, oh, well, yeah, that's right, baby. The pharaohs, and yeah, he's getting into it. And then, no, I'm not saying that anything was good or bad. Because if you look at really what the act was, it shows in the Old Testament that the people don't have a king. So they keep asking for a king and asking for king. And these are all metaphors. This is, who are they asking? They're asking this God. They're the children of Abel. So they're asking the same being that they've always been trying to communicate with, that they want this king. And then the being comes back, which is themselves, and says, you don't need a king. I'm telling you, you don't need one. And these people, oh yes, you're going to give us one. They said, so they elected Saul. This is another riddle. Saul it means salt. In almost all languages, it's synonymous even with the serpent. But Sol is the planet Saturn, because Saturn has the same shape geometrically as the cube of salt. And as I said, oh, you shall be the salt of the earth. And so when they elected Saul, to see what all the metaphors keep playing themselves out. There's no deviation. That's why so many people are attracted to it, but they're attracted to the externalized version of it, right? They don't want to see how this is all going on inside. And then so as the story is playing out, as they elect the king has bad practices. Like everything about Saul was just wrong. And then it progresses from there. Next thing they get David, DVD. This is another metaphor for divide. Basically, the one that came with the sword. They said that his hands were too bloody. He never received the edict from the king. They had to pass it down to Solomon because David had been involved in too much war. With what? The sword. You see, and so then so you're following the entire thing as a metaphor rather than the actual story of physical people, although I'm sure the shadows do cast themselves and people animate those shadows. And then, of course, Solomon comes along. And then, so you're reading a story down a timeline. And then what it's really showing, though, is that there's nothing new under the sun. Right. That there is in the circle, there's a pattern to it. And that once you get that pattern, which was basically probably what the Essenes were looking for. They're like, shoot, we're going to get out of here. We watch the stars every night, because once we get this pattern down, and then we understand the actual emission coming from these stars, and then we map the stars to these animals, and then we understand the animalistic traits that we need to move around in the parallax of our own consciousness, then we'll be stargates in no time. And then we'll make it back to the continuum. Anyone refuting that? No, we're not in division. Okay, let's go. You see, so it's that simple. It's like, when are you tired of being banged up in the Matrix, basically? Are you fighting for the Matrix? And that's, it was a real thing on the movie where they said some of the people so hopelessly attached to the Matrix that they will fight you over this Matrix, because there's always, okay, yeah, everything but, like I said, the ring that my wife gave me, that's... got to go with me. You got to bury that with me. And, I watched the documentary, Earth is from the Earthing map, but I think it's called Grounded. And, it was just so deep, man. And just how the guy's been doing so much work, and he's got, really, he projected it really well because he's been in film for 30 years, and then also he's passionate about teaching people how to ground themselves and understanding how important that is. But, you know, through that process of the film, there was one point where it really highlighted in a very deep way, and none of this will be going with you, like no matter who you are, how much rank you have and all of that kind of stuff, like you'll basically be building all that up to at one point let it go anyway, because even if you do come back here again, the probability of you having access to that means that you would actually have to be a sequential. Then you're really in deep doo-doo. I mean, you actually have to be a person that understands how to reincarnate themselves back into a life again, into the same family life again. Hope that that family life respected you enough to preserve everything that you had until you got back. Meaning that you probably would have to be threatening them. Some people don't even play it all out. If someone's on the physical reality, like the Queen of England, who is definitely a sequential, meaning he keeps coming back over and over and over again, it's through fear, through those dukes, which are basically the knights, other entities, disembodied, disincarnate, vowed and vowed entities, basically, that will protect that kind of domain. But think about what they've gotten themselves into. And as my good friend Jason told me, he said, look, Sevan, you should see them. They're more lost in this than anyone else. Some people think that they're the Queen of England. He's buying into that role so deep that they never get out the Matrix. The Queen may be the last person to shut the door to fully realize that, you know, the Matrix needs to be canceled. You see what it means? It may go on just because one being is continuously projecting duality, because that's all it takes. It's just about whether we want to join into that. So this next level for us all is about a great stage of maturity where it's just other things to do. And that's one thing that once people can also look at it, if they don't want to, you know, just accept that things, they need to stop judging things. They can also look at how much can you really change anyway about this stuff that we're talking about. Like if we take it piece by piece, and if you say Illuminati, like there's how many of these guys, and then we're going to change all their minds?
Right.
Come on.
Exactly.
Like, I mean, I'm not going off on that fool's errand. That's like you telling me to run into Fort Knox with a BB gun. It doesn't make sense to me, at least anymore. So the reality is that this is about getting very mature with this and saying, you know what? You know, I can actually spend my time and, of course, my energy, and I'm responsible for maintaining this frequency on something that is far more productive and far more balanced. So that way I maintain that balance. And then anything that I create and I build, it projects that balance versus me being all pissed off. And then I'm writing a blog, right, that day. And then all the anger, which I may not even express directly in that blog, but I'm expressing it energetically, and it's reeking from everything that I'm saying. You see what I mean? And so this is also how this collective projection of the illusion, we can throw webs onto each other and start trapping each other. They call it crabs in a bucket, right? So it's a real thing that until people understand the principles of actually judging themselves, in many tenses, your test of whether you've gotten out of judging will be simply the stuff that they're carrying on about you, and you just staying out of it, you know, from that dynamic, if you really think about it. So,
Right.
And, you know, of course, I'm talking about stuff that I'm working on. Like some people say, well, I saw your post like 3 months ago. You tore this guy's head off. And
I got you.
Yeah, but, you know, I'm working on that.
Yeah. Definitely work in progress.
For sure.
All right, man. So let's take a break, and we'll come back and continue on with this stuff. This is some good stuff, Sevan. And yeah, I just love having you on.
Oh, man, likewise.
You get me. You invigorate me back into this stuff when every time that I feel like I hit one of those flat spots in my own personal growth, I'll just flip on some Sevan, and that'll get me going. So,
Likewise.
good stuff, man. All right, guys out there listening, websites are resistance2010.com, astralquest.com, secretenergy.com, and you are listening to this on the 100thmonkeyrradio.com with Tom minus Ramon tonight. And I would urge you guys to pop on over to our website also and check it out. We've got hundreds and hundreds of hours and hundreds of guests on there. So going into our 5th season here, Sevan. We've, yeah, good stuff. All right, guys, we will see you in the second hour. Condemnation without investigation is the height of ignorance. And for Mr. Ramon, the love you deny is the pain you carry. Namaste, my friends.
Until you're scared straight and then you can't wait to get out. Then you shout, damn, I got freedom. Unless it's being taught, black man, I know you need one. The right time to make you free your mind. Wake up. If you're listening, then press rewind. It's the right time to make you hard to enter. The beats I'm bending, the vibes I'm sending, it's pleasure, never better. Even though shit is a mess, I never stress, in touch with insight, therefore I'm blessed with the armor. Tell your mama, but kill the drama. It's the right time to make you free your mind. Wake up. If you missed it, then press rewind. It's the right time to make you free your mind. Wake up. If you missed it, then press rewind. It's the right time to make you free your mind. Wake up. If you missed it, then press rewind. It's the right time to make you free your mind. Wake up. The master rhymer indiscreet. I walk the street with the knowledge, learning about things that you can't get in college, like science from the pavement, beats from the basement. My mouth full of lyrics, then the label makes the placement. Then my face went across the screen. This girl saw me getting raw to the beats with gasoline. My self-esteem went through the roof. Stepped into the club, yo, I got juice on the MI. Now she's in my face, dragging me all around the place. Damn, it's a disgrace that I can't enjoy my craft, spew my math, cause I'm too busy running away from this girl with the dumb laugh. My path straight, so I lose the habit, and yo, I bounce like the rabbit. Yo, she's got the habit, cause she's chasing me. I'm out the door, kid, it's in the soul, and I'm free. It's the right time to make you free your mind. Wake up. If you missed it, then press rewind. It's the right time to make you free your mind. Wake up. If